AM 1060 WMEL. The views expressed on the following program are those of the hosts, callers, and guests, and are not necessarily those of WMEL staff, management, or advertisers.
This is Joe Steckler, folks, your host for Helping Seniors, the radio arm of Helping Seniors of Brevard County Incorporated. The purpose of our organization is to educate, inform, and connect seniors and those that care for seniors to resources. And during the course of the show today, I'm going to point out how the radio show and some of our printed media gets people to come to people within Brevard County from outside of Brevard County. And the guy with me today doesn't even know I'm going to talk about it, but I will talk about it. The number to call for our office is 473-7770, and you can call WMEL AM 1060 at 241-1060, 241-1060. The sponsors for this part of the show include Gentiva Home Healthcare, the Eye Institute, Solid Dental Implant, Bill Johnson, elder attorney, my panelist today, this radio station, WMEL AM 1060, the Wistoff Hospital Systems, Love and Home Care, Ren Care, which is a medical alert program, folks, great program, Atlantic Shores Rehabilitation. That's just some of the sponsors for the first part. Today, I want to talk about several things. And I mentioned the value of the printed media, the radio show, television shows. And I'm sure Bill will comment on this as we talk about it during the show, because if people don't know why guardianships are important, if they don't know why it's important to have legal documents in place, they're never going to find out unless they have access to an information source. We can have all kinds of sources to help people, Bill, resources, but if people don't know about them, they're going to lie dormant and nothing's going to happen, right?
Correct.
In your case, and I know for a fact that life is not fair at times.
I think that's a given, Joe.
It's what?
It's a given.
Okay. Robert, let's talk about attorney's fees. I know for a fact that you are have the highest certifications for estate planning and elder attorney of anyone in the county of Brevard, Florida. Correct or not?
Yeah, I'm the only one who is Florida Bar Board certified in elder law.
Now, can you tell me any earthly reason why attorneys that are not qualified the same as you, and this is important for people to understand, why attorneys that don't have the same qualifications charge and get as much as 3 times what you would get for the preparation of the same type of estate plans and legal documents? I know it's a loaded question, but it's something people need to understand, Bill.
I think people need to understand that you don't have to go with your first choice of a lawyer. A lot of people, there is a large law firm in Orlando that advertises on TV, and one of the things they talk about is preparing estate planning documents. And I think, from what I understand, they advertise over here, and then if they have somebody call in, they will set up an appointment, at one of those time-sharing arrangements where they have kind of they have an office in a place.
A virtual office.
Yeah, a virtual office. And they'll set up an appointment, and they are getting $1,500 for something I would charge $400 for. Like you said, 3 times as much. And it just amazes me that people don't even question it. They get it all day long.
Yes. And the reason I bring this up, folks, is that our organization, Helping Seniors, has a newsletter in Senior Scene magazine, and the estimated readership of that is $25,000 a month. It turns out that $25,000 a month, not just in Brevard County, We had a phone call from a lady in Christmas, Florida. She read Senior Scene magazine, read our newsletter, saw what Bill had written in his column, called our information specialist and said, for certain, how can I contact Mr. Johnson? And Kay said, where do you live? She said, I live in Christmas. She said, that's a long drive all the way down to Wickham Road. She says, I don't care. She says, I read what the man said in the article. I believed what he said. She said, I want to talk to him. You know, there's no value, Bill, that can be placed on good information, good education, resources that can do their very best to get people to help. And you made a key point when you said you don't have to take the first attorney that you come to.
Correct.
You should ask questions. What kind of questions should be? We're going to get into guardianship.
You know, it's almost like doctors, too. Is a lot of people, they go to the first doctor and the doctor tells them something and they just stick with that doctor. You know, you can always go get a second opinion and get, another quote as to what somebody would charge for something.
Yeah. And there's so much being said. I just had to have a pacemaker replacement, folks, last Friday, and it was done up at Wichita. And I had Dr. Foreman on my radio show here at the station. And Dr. Foreman, I really liked what he said on the radio. And I said, would you do a TV show, Dr. Foreman? He said, I'd be happy to. Did a TV show. It's a great TV show. You can look at helpingseniors.Brevard.org and pull up Dr. Foreman's TV show and radio show and listen to them both. Now, why I'm telling a story is that when I went out and found out that my battery had to be replaced in my pacemaker, turned out Dr. Foreman's a new doctor in that practice. And he came in, he said, is it okay with you if I change the battery? I says, perfectly fine with me. He changed the battery out. And it took, from the time I got into Wichita, from the time I left, it was about 5, close to 6 hours. In the process of that time, he saw me 4 times. And when we got ready to leave, he told my wife, he said, if you have any problems getting that pressure bandage off, call me. I'll come over and I'll take that pressure bandage off and make it easier for you. Now, how many doctors do that? My point is, Bill, there are still doctors out here that care about their patients, they care about the right kind of treatment, and we need to do a better job of providing access to those doctors. The same thing we need to do with attorneys and other professional types.
Correct. I agree.
So let's talk about what I wanted to talk about today, what you said you wanted to talk about, guardianships.
Okay.
First of all, how about telling our listeners just what a guardianship is? What does a guardian do?
Well, a guardianship's where we go to court and have somebody declared incapacitated, and then certain rights are taken away from that individual and placed with a guardian. And the guardian then exercises the rights of the person they're acting on behalf of. Usually those rights are, managing your finances, managing your health care, where you're going to live, if you can travel or not, hold a job, all kinds of things. So if you have somebody who hasn't done any sort of like pre-planning where they've had a power of attorney or a health care surrogate, and then they become incapacitated, then we have to go to court, have them declared incapacitated, and have a guardian put in charge of those things if that's needed. Or sometimes you may have done those documents, given somebody power of attorney, but they turned around and were stealing from you. So sometimes we have to file a guardianship in a case like that to prevent them from running off with somebody's money and getting somebody else appointed to manage your financial affairs or healthcare affairs.
You made a comment, court appointed.
Mm-hmm.
Guardians can be appointed way before you have to get to a court.
They can only be appointed by a circuit court judge. You can write out a document where you can ask for somebody to be your guardian, a certain somebody, but that's not the only person who can actually appoint a guardian for you is a circuit court judge.
You mean if I wanted to have somebody...
You could do a voluntary guardianship.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, but that requires you not be incapacitated.
Okay, but I'm thinking about pre-planning. Just like we talk about pre-planning, estate planning, and all this stuff. This is an area we never ever talked about. What about the feasibility of more people saying, in order to prepare for an eventuality, I want to put in motion to have a guardian appointed voluntarily before I get into having a court do it?
You can do that. Yes.
Do you ever do that?
Yes. We do that on occasions where we have people who know that at some point in the future they will be incapacitated or they just can't manage their affairs right now, but they're not, don't have full-blown dementia, and they can go to court and nominate a guardian to make those decisions for them.
The reason I ask that question is because I was talking to a lady yesterday that when her husband passed away, because certain documents, he was military, and because certain documents were in certain names, she was almost 3 months before she could get Social Security and the military pension. And it was, I didn't completely understand that, but can you elaborate on what I'm trying to talk about?
Well, federal agencies don't necessarily recognize durable powers of attorney. Usually each federal agency has its own procedure, like Social Security, the IRS, the Defense Department. And they have their own procedures in place on who they will deal with and how they determine that. But if you have a guardianship that is enacted from a state circuit judge, they will recognize the authority of a guardian.
The military will?
Yep. Veterans, VA, Social Security, IRS, they'll all recognize the authority of a guardian, but they won't recognize the authority of a power of attorney.
But if the same person had a voluntary guardianship set up ahead of time,
they'll recognize the guardian, yeah.
So why don't we talk about this more? Why don't you as an attorney promote that?
What happens is when you set up a voluntary guardianship, you place all your rights in this other person. Most people don't want to give up their rights.
Okay, so there's no way that you can...
So imagine I've got a 98-year-old lady who's been duped by a used car salesman, for example. She may want to go in and get a voluntary guardianship, and then, if somebody shows up at her doorstep selling vacuum cleaners, she can't enter into a contract. No matter how bad they press her to enter into that contract, that right's been placed with the guardian, who may be more adept in negotiations.
But you can't set up a voluntary guardianship that would be activated.
You can do a pre-need guardian declaration saying, I want so-and-so to be my guardian if a guardianship ever gets filed.
Okay.
And that creates a presumption in favor of that person. But they would still have to go through the circuit court vetting process.
They would still have to do that?
Yeah, they have to be over 18, sound mind, can't be convicted of a felony. And nowadays, you have to go through a credit check and a fingerprint background screening. I think it's a level 2 is what they call it.
Yeah, level 2.
Yeah.
But what we're uncovering here is that it's just like when we talked to this lady, and she said, I advise people that I talk to that if you're a military wife, that you should have at least $10,000 set aside to pay bills if this happens, if everything is not set up the right way, because there's just no way you can access funds. And this is something that...
Well, generally, financial advisors recommend you have, I think it's 2.5 months of expenses set aside at any time.
But, Bill, how do people that are living on $700 to $1,000 a month, how do they set aside 2.5 times? It's impossible.
Well, there was a recent study on that, Joe, and it determined that most people don't even have a week set aside. They're paycheck to paycheck, I think about 75% of us. And if we're presented with an unexpected bill, we don't have the money to pay for that, like a car breaking down or a fridge going out. So most people are living paycheck to paycheck.
So that's why the credit card debt's so high.
Of course, yeah. That's everybody's emergency fund.
Do you ever listen to Dave Ramsey?
I do not.
Have you ever listened to it?
No.
You know who he is?
I know who he is.
Okay. He has got some awful good advice, and it happens the show's played on the station. And actually, I like what he says because it makes common sense. The problem is that so many of us don't have the wherewithal to put common sense in place and make it act for us.
Some of what he says makes common sense.
Okay, but if he says you need to do a better job of preparing a budget and sticking to a budget, I can understand what the man's saying there. And yeah,
I would agree with that part.
Yeah. There are certain things you have to agree with, certain things you don't. But when we get in back to the guardianship things, there's some. One of the errors you mentioned that guards can serve where no one else can.
Well, I was talking there about professional guardians. There are people who have a business where they serve on behalf of incapacitated people, and they are professional guardians, which means they do 3 or more guardianships for somebody who is not a relative.
Say that again.
If you do a guardianship for 3 or more people who are not relatives, you have to be a professional guardian in Florida, which means you have to have passed you have to take a course, then you have to pass a test, you have to post a bond, you go through fingerprinting, level 2 background check, can't be a felon, all that good stuff.
I remember when I was starting out in the healthcare business here in Brevard County in the middle 90s, that to my recollection, there were only 3 guardians in Brevard County.
That sounds about right. There were probably about 3 professional guardians, people who did this for a living. Now there's probably quite a few more.
Are they still... Who, based on your knowledge of the profession right now, where are most of the guardians located?
Let me tell you.
Okay.
And this is just off the top of my head, and I may not have the numbers wrong, but just, I think, about 5 years ago, maybe it's a little longer than that, there were like 73 professional guardians statewide. Today,
73?
Yeah, today there's over 440. I mean, it's, quadrupled and then some.
It's a good business.
Well, we have a growing population, so there's a lot more people who need the services.
Bill, I would like very much if you can help our listening audience understand why it's important for families to consider having a guardian and what that guardian can do for the family and for the person.
Okay, well, let's start with the story recently has begun. There's been a lot of negative press about professional guardians in Florida, especially. The New Times newspaper down in Miami, South Florida, ran an expose on guardians in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. And then the St. Pete Times ran a series of articles about professional guardians over in the Tampa-St. Pete area. So there was a lot of negative press, and that resulted in a law change that went through last legislative session. And there will also be a coming bill this legislative session about licensing professional guardians. They would be actually monitored through the same organization that deals with public guardians. So it would be kind of the Office of Public and Private or Professional Guardians.
That should be, though.
That is coming, yes. That is hot off the presses. We expect a bill to be filed anytime. Most people don't know the legislative session starts early next year in January. So they are already getting ready, I think, this month to start meetings.
Why are they getting early? Because it takes them so long to get something done?
No, they do it every so often to mix up the dates so that legislators can go to spring break with their kids, because usually the legislative session's right in the middle of the kids' spring breaks. So I think they move the date up every so often just to give everybody a chance to, if you have kids who are, high school, elementary school age, you get to be with them for a change.
On the other hand, if they got their job done more expeditiously, they might get out on time.
Yeah, that too.
Right. Folks, Bill and I are joking a little bit, but I'll ask Bill to comment on this. He's an attorney. He deals with estate plans. He deals with seniors. My own personal opinion, Bill, is that our legislature has done some things that have adversely impacted on seniors over the last several years. Do you have a comment on that?
It seems they mostly have knee-jerk reactions to things. The biggest change, of course, was the whole Medicaid system and changing that to privatization. And now we're finding a lot of these companies that have been brought in to run the Medicaid system, the managed care system, as well as the long-term care system, are all going belly up. They
can't, is that right?
Yeah, they can't do it as cheap as the state was doing it.
Holy mackerel. Folks, we're at the midpoint of our show. We've got to take a break. We got some more guardianship stuff to talk about. I'm going to be able to pick up on what he just commented on there back, because this is something new to me, because I think that's extremely important. It impacts on caregivers and impacts on people needing care. So stay with us.
AM 1060 WMEL.
This is Joe Steckler, folks, your host for the second part of Helping Seniors of Brevard County, the radio arm of the big parent organization Helping Seniors. Our purpose and mission is to inform, educate, and connect people with resources and help those people that care for senior citizens that need help. We are not in competition with other organizations. We serve to complete the care equation, and our mission is to provide information on the many wonderful services like the Brevard Alzheimer's Foundation, like Aging Matters, like Brevard 211, like the excellent daycare, Sarah Care, and some of these other places, housing for the homeless, Daily Bread. We promote all those because people need to know about it. One program we promote is the Veterans Aid and Attendance. I have spoken at a group of retirees. I found out there were two ladies there living on less than $700 a month in food stamps. Their husbands both served in World War II. They were eligible for VA aid and attendance, an extra allowance per month of about $1,400. It was like a gold mine to those people, folks. But if people don't know about these programs, they don't know to ask for them. They don't know where to go to apply for them. Hence, the need for helping seniors and what we do. The sponsors for this part of the show include Senior Scene Magazine, Hometown News, Spotlight Magazine, Seniors Helping Seniors, The Fountains of Melbourne, Beth Courtney of the Braswell Financial Team, Canadian Medications of Melbourne, Wiederbund Malik Attorneys, Vitas Hospice, and Peaceful Beach Mediation. It's by an attorney, Brooke Goldfarb, and she tries to help seniors prevent divorce before you get into a divorce. So there's just a lot that can be done to help people. The phone number to reach Kay at the office is 473-7770. And before Bill and I pick up and go back, I want to talk about something that's coming up. It's very important to our program. We have to raise money to pay the people that work there and pay for some of the television, some of the other things we do. It does cost to operate. We can't do it all free. I take no money. But we're going to have a huge auction at Holy Name of Jesus Catholic Church on 17 October starting at 6 p.m. You can get details. Posters will be going up all over the county. It'll be in the newspaper. It's on our website, helpingseniors.brevard.org. We've got a rug gallery of 26 of the 46 Oriental rugs, handmade rugs that will be for sale at the auction. But one thing I want to talk in particular about is with all the hullabaloo about the Deflategate and the Super Bowl and everything else, through the efforts of Charles Fazzino, who is the artist for the Super Bowl, Joe Tranchini, who was the quarterback of the 60 Navy football team, Joe Bellino, who was a Heisman Trophy winner for the Naval Academy, and then went on to play for the Patriots, and Coach Bill Belichick, who was a 6-year-old kid at the Naval Academy, and I played football there as a plebe in 1954. He is signing, with a personal memorandum on it, one of the Super Bowl posters and sending it to us, and we will have that for the auction on 17 October. That's just one example of some of the things that will be spectacular, something you're not going to get anyplace else. So call the office, 473-7770. Find out how you can come, what's going on. Now, we'll go back to what Bill and I were talking about. We're talking about guardianships. We're trying to talk about some aspects of guardianships that people don't seldom discuss, Bill. And you sent me four things. One of them was, next time you got to send us in bigger print.
Okay.
It's just, I got to get it in the right light. Here, you said here are some of the benefits of having a professional guardian. 1, they can serve when no one else can. 2, they can serve when there's no one else to serve. They can serve when there is conflict in the family, and they can serve when there are limited resources. Let's pick up on the fourth one first, because I want to make sure people understand that one.
Well, when a professional guardian gets appointed to represent somebody, they are allowed to bill for their time, and they can bill the person, what we call the ward, against the ward's resources. However, most people don't know when the ward runs out of resources, the professional guardian doesn't just get to quit. They have to stay on, in some cases, years, and work for free. And a lot of people don't understand that. So if they were appointed to be a professional guardian for somebody who had $20,000 in the bank, and they were in an assisted living facility with dementia, when that person's money runs out, the guardian doesn't get to just walk away from there and quit serving as guardian. They are on the hook, and they have to stay and work for free for that person.
Why is that? Why is that an advantage to the client? Let's say you have a client. You got two things. The client may have a family, but may not have a family. If a client doesn't have a family, that court-appointed guardian that has to continue to serve becomes extremely valuable.
Well, yeah, and consider you have a family member that may want to do it, but they can't put in the time because they have a job. Okay, so the only way they could serve is if they could bill themselves for those services, and when the person runs out of money, they're unable to continue to serve because they got to go back to work, whereas professional guardians continue on and serve.
What is there any kind of a median average of what a guardianship would cost?
They all vary. It depends on how much or how little work is involved. In my example, I talked about somebody in a assisted living with dementia. Pretty much from the professional guardian's perspective, their fees would probably be at the very beginning. Because once they're appointed, managing somebody who's in a safe environment where all their needs are being met by the facility is fairly easy. You don't have to put in a lot of time and effort. You just have to make sure the facility's doing their job. Whereas if you had somebody who's in and out of the hospital all the time and is in a nursing home and, is a real, constant source of time consumption, those guardianships tend to be a lot more expensive.
Can you think of a downside of not having a court-appointed guardian? What could be a downside?
Well, when somebody's appointed, or even a professional or a family member as a guardian, they have to account to the court for the person's finances. And that accounting gets audited by the auditors out of the clerk's office. They also have to file a plan of care. So if you don't have that, say you just have somebody serving as healthcare surrogate and with a power of attorney, we may never know what happened to the individual's money because there's no accounting required of those people.
With a private appointed guardian?
Yeah, no, with a power of attorney.
Oh, just power of attorney.
Yeah, they just can do whatever they want, and a lot of times they do.
And that's where it's most likely that the client will be stripped of their finances.
Yeah, exploited.
Yep. And the sad part about it, that I had Laura Moody, who's assistant state attorney. I had her on the radio and the TV show, and we agreed, and you and I have talked about it before on radio and TV. Most of that exploitation occurs at the hands of family members.
Right.
That's a sad part about the whole darn thing, Bill.
It is.
It is. Now, the other thing that in other areas, they're saying that the court-appointed guardian can serve when there is conflict in the family. What kind of a situation or case do you set up for something like that?
Well, imagine that there are, a parent becomes incapacitated, and you have 4 kids. 2 of the kids say, we need to be doing X, Y, Z. We need to get Dad into a place where he can get lots of care and get his needs met. And the other 2 are like, no, we want Dad to stay home because we're living at home. We can take care of him. And, and there's a split. And sometimes that becomes very hostile, especially if the kids didn't get along to begin with. So sometimes the way we alleviate all that tension in the family is we have everybody agree to appoint a third party, a professional guardian, to do that job.
Do those kind of situations occur in families where there are a limited amount of assets? Or what has been your experience in conflict within the family regarding amount of financial assets available? If there's limited assets, probably not much conflict.
You betcha. When we do these guardianships, sometimes the more resources are involved, the greater the conflict. Not all the time. Sometimes they're actually fighting over the care, but a lot of times they're fighting over who gets to determine how the money's spent.
That's sad.
Yes, but that's the world we live in. Most people don't have pensions anymore, and they're counting on inheritance from their parents to be able to have a retirement. And, we've talked about this before. Yeah. 401ks are woefully underfunded, and there's no pensions unless you work for, state or
federal government.
Yeah, federal government. So most people don't have a pension, and their 401k is woefully underfunded. And, if you're 50 years old and you got an 80-year-old parent, you're probably at 50 staring retirement right in the face.
Yeah.
You're probably counting on some of that money. And then when we're going to tell you, well, no, that money's probably going to be eaten up caring for your dad, a lot of people don't like that answer. Or have, not all the time, but have other opinions about it.
Yeah. And which brings us to the other part of this equation is that many people that listen to our show or watch the TV shows, unless they hear us cite some of the statistics, don't realize the severity of the age situation that we have in Brevard County. Right now, 22.1% of the people are over the age of 65, whereas 19% are under the age of 18. So you've got a great big large amount of people between 18 and 65. And if you use the AARP standard of 55 and older, we have 245,000 people in Brevard County that are senior citizens.
And the demographics of people over age 80 is exploding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the number of people living past 80 and 65, all those groups are growing.
Yeah, and whether we want to admit it or not, many of those people over the age of 60, the majority are women, and many of these women have not worked and do not have a maximum Social Security. They have a widow's Social Security, which is much less. In some cases, they have they have their husband, they pick up their husband's Social Security. But what a lot of people don't realize is that in Brevard County we have 67,000 veterans that qualify for the VA aid to attendance their families do, but we have another 180,000 total people that could also qualify for veterans benefits and are not even aware of it. And how stupid people can be. I'll cite my own case.
Well, this is a great example of why you may want a professional guardian, because your family member may not even know about these benefits, and professional guardians are acutely aware of whether it's Medicare, VA, or Medicaid, or any of those benefits. That's, part of their job, is knowing how to get those things.
See, and I didn't even think of that. I had Mr. Van Arsdale, who is the lead supervisor out at the VA program in Vieira, and I had him on radio and then on a TV show. And as we did the show, he pointed out to me that I was most likely qualified for an increased disability based on my hearing loss from my time in submarines with diesel engines. That plus there's another benefit that I was not aware of. He's aware of it. So he said, when the dust settles, he said, I want you to come see me, because he said, you have been missing out on two benefits for many, many years. And one of those benefits, Bill, would have exempted probably as much as 50% of my income from taxes. So that's a tremendous loss that I personally have experienced. I wasn't even aware of it. And here I am doing radio and TV and writing columns for newspapers, and I don't know about it.
Right.
But once I find out about it, and when I talk with people like you, I want to make sure our listeners know how dumb I was, or how misinformed I was, or non-informed, and why radio, TV, and printed articles are extremely important. It's why I have asked Bill to give us a monthly column for our newsletter, folks, and he's agreed to do that. I get a monthly column from Dr. Sheldon, the dental implant guy, because he talks about so many things other than dental implants. This next month, in the October issue of Senior Citizen magazine, he's got an article on spit and the importance of spit. And most people, when you talk about spit, think horrible things. But spit is extremely important to the prevention of dry mouth, and dry mouth leads to the loss of teeth.
Right.
It's just like if you don't have an adequate legal plan in place, you lose money, you pay excess taxes, you lose benefits, you don't know what to do, and all this stuff can be prevented. Because the one thing that before we leave the show today, I want you to talk about what good attorneys do in terms of consultations. How you give people a free consultation?
Correct.
Why do you do that?
Well, we have to look at what the job entails before we can tell them how much it'll be. But it also gets the people in the door where they don't have a kind of confrontational atmosphere. They come in and they can sit down and talk freely and know the clock's not running. And it may be that we don't even take the case, but sometimes they need to, know where to be steered, or, want a estimate. Sometimes we do flat rate estimates. If we're doing documents, we'll tell them it'll be X. Or sometimes it's an hourly fee if you're doing some sort of litigation or, other, guardianship or something like that. It'll be a retainer-based and then hourly fee.
With the recent changes in Florida law, I'll say within the last 3 years, what are some of the things that apply to guardianships, to other legal matters, changes in marital status, moving from another state to Florida? What are some of the legal things that you can succinctly state to our listening audience that need to be thinking about?
Well, at least in Florida, if you move here from another state, guardianship in Florida is probably a model for the country. I've seen guardianship stuff, and I say stuff, but legal documents from different jurisdictions and some of the cases that come out of those jurisdictions, and nobody pays attention to seniors' rights like Floridians do. And that's simply because we have so many of them that we have to put in adequate safeguards. Last year we had that guardianship bill that went through. That was Representative Pasadomo's bill. This year we're looking at Senator Dieter's bill, which is again, licensing guardians. And the year before that, Representative Pasadomo had the exploitation bill that made it easier to go after people who exploit our seniors. So you have, people up in Tallahassee who are taking an active role in looking out for seniors' rights. That's one area that I think Florida excels in. We do have other areas that we could do a much better job of in Florida, or get smarter about how we do the job. But, we are a fairly good state when it comes to taking care of our seniors.
I agree 101% with you. And in that regard, do you think that our legislators will be smart enough to do something about repealing this privatization and realizing that in some cases government does do a better job? I hate to admit that, but in some cases government does do a better job of managing funds than private enterprise.
Well, the thing with privatization is usually, it initially saves you some money and then you can wave that around and show everybody that it works. But then you get into year 2 and 3 and 4 and it ends up costing you more. And simply it's the fact that instead, in government you're just paying the worker. In private enterprise you got to pay the worker and also make a profit. And so just by its very nature, those profits, unless there's some big, huge savings that can be gotten by privatizing, those profits are going to make it much more expensive to do the job than if the state was simply doing it. So I don't know where we're going to go with this, because all the Medicaid companies, as you know, were up in Tallahassee asking for increases.
Yeah.
And if they had gotten the increases they wanted, the program would have already cost more. Okay? And we're in year 2.
We're in year 2, and
they're already asking for more money.
Yeah. And I got a rate sheet from Tallahassee that shows, in fact, your legal assistant got it for me. It shows that the costs have gone up and amount of service has gone down, and this is not the right way to take care of an increasing baby boomer population.
And we didn't get an opportunity to talk about this before the show, but there's been a huge lawsuit just filed, like literally a couple of days ago.
There's what now?
There's a huge lawsuit filed on behalf of, 5 or 6 senior citizens against the state long-term care managed program for failure to deliver services.
How can you do?
I can send you a copy of it.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Okay,
that'd be something that I might want to do something in an article in the paper. That's another thing, folks. I get a lot of comments from you all about what I write about in the paper. At the same time, you can send me an email at helpingseniors@brevard.org. You can send me a comment. If you want something to be discussed in one of the columns, I can certainly do that. Like you, I'm not a mind reader. I based on what Kay tells me and what we uncover, we find a great need for many of you to know more about certain things. And actually, the Medicaid bill is talking about is one of the biggest things that people need to know more about. It's just a big thing that we need to do a better job of managing. On the subject of guardianships, Bill, the last thing that we talked about here was that guardians can serve when there's no one else to serve.
Correct, and we talked about also serving when the kids can't be there as well. and they kind of interrelate it. You know, some people don't have anybody, Joe. You know, they're 98 years old and they just simply outlived everybody. There's no family or nothing. And a lot of times we can get a professional guardian in there to make the decisions for that person.